The Hiboy S2 Pro is actually the very first scooter that I ever bought. Before I give you my final thoughts, we're gonna do a quick bell test because welcome to chilly Orlando. Obviously it's nighttime, November 30th, 2024, roughly 55 degrees, and I wanted to bring you guys a quick scooter review with the Ninebot G30LP and the Hiboy S2 Pro. They're very similarly priced, especially right now during the Black Friday weekend. Each one is about $400, so we'll get into that in just a little bit, but let's go ahead and jump into a quick scooter review on both of these awesome, similarly priced, similarly spec'd scooters. Well, we've got a quick change of plans. We were gonna do a review on both the Hiboy and the Ninebot, but unfortunately the Ninebot is no longer available for purchase. So we're gonna switch things up and just do a review of the Hiboy, but I will reference a couple things about the Ninebot because it's there. It's a great scooter, but there's a recall on the folding mechanism. Well, let's jump into it. Let's review this Hiboy S2 Pro. I think that it was a pretty great scooter, but I'll let you guys know which one we ended up choosing at the end of the video. The Hiboy S2 Pro is actually the very first scooter that I ever bought. So about 2 years ago, I got the Hiboy S2 Pro in Corvallis, Oregon, and I was riding it to work. It went through a whole lot of rain. It went through just a good beating. We took it around all over town. It was an awesome scooter. This was actually the scooter that started it all, and I really enjoyed it whenever I first had it. So let's get into a couple of facts about the Hiboy S2 Pro. It has a 500 watt motor, allowing it to reach speeds of about 19 miles an hour and roughly that same 25 mile range from the battery. So again, I do think that both batteries are roughly the same capacity. It can charge at a max of 36 volts, 11 amp hours, and it says that it has a max speed of 19 miles per hour. Max load of roughly 220 on both scooters. Even if you're over 220, it's not really gonna matter, but you know, as you get heavier, it's obviously gonna put more strain, wear and tear on the motors, and it may go a little bit slower. I personally would recommend riding each of these not in sport mode if you're trying to conserve any energy at all. And if I'm not mistaken, on the apps, you can go through and adjust like what the speeds on those different modes are. The Hiboy has an awesome dual suspension. It's got 2 springs right here. So whenever you're riding this one, you definitely want to lean back on these springs and see, you might be able to see in right here, I don't know. But you definitely want to lean back on those springs and lift up on the front wheel so that you can have a better riding experience, hopefully a little bit softer of a ride whenever you're leaning back on that spring. These tires are really hard plastic. I don't know if you can get in here and really see or not, but there's no give to them at all. They're super duper hard. And while they're comfortable-ish, anytime that you're going over any bumps, they're definitely not as comfortable as the Ninebot. So something to keep in mind, if you're looking for a comfortable ride, the Ninebot definitely has the Hiboy in that area. Not to mention, I guess that we'll just roll right into the brakes, but not to mention that whenever you're pulling the handle brake, it can take away some of that plastic wheel in the back, depending on how often you're doing it. And that can definitely make the ride a little bit choppier whenever you're going through at normal, you know, just throughout the day, normal riding, if you're sliding it or doing anything like that. So one of those things that I think that you guys would be aware of, but something to keep in mind. Now, this right here is interesting. So as we talked about with the Ninebot, it has one pedal driving, essentially. There's only one throttle. But on the Hiboy has a left throttle and a right throttle. The right throttle will give you acceleration, and the left throttle will give you regen. Now, the regen on this is definitely better, and I like the way that the display, we'll just go ahead and turn on the display real quick, but I like the way that the display shows that you're actually regenning. I don't know if I have a clip of that or not, but it'll show a little orange bar here whenever you're regenning. Super cool. Same kind of functionality with this one. One click will turn on the lights, and you can see, I honestly like the lighting setup on this one a little bit better because it has this underglow, and this underglow looks awesome. I have a couple of B-roll footage clips that I'll throw up here, but I really love the way that this underglow works. It does also have a couple of reflectors on the same areas as the Ninebot, but these reflectors are red, and in my opinion, they're not as easy to see as the Ninebots. If the Ninebot reflectors were on the Hiboy, I think that that would be a better combination, but the color scheme wouldn't be as good. So just one of those things to keep in mind. Whenever you're hitting the brake light here, it does blink. I definitely like that. And if you're hitting the left throttle, the regen throttle, it will also blink. Whereas whenever you're on the Hiboy, only the handle brake will blink the light. Whenever you're just using the one pedal driving feature on the Ninebot, it doesn't blink. So one of those weird kind of differences between the two. Continuing on with the brakes here, we've got a really nice disc brake in the back. Maybe you want to get it on this side and you can see it, but you can go through and like tighten this as needed. But this disc brake is a lot better, in my opinion, than the hand brake on the Ninebot. Just from playing with it and using it, I definitely think that this is a better brake. However, over time, the Ninebot has gotten better. Once we tightened the handle brake at the top and at the bottom, it did seem to grab a little bit more responsively, but this disc brake on the Hiboy is definitely better than this brake here. If you want to come and zoom in, you can kind of see a little bit of the brake here. It's just not as big, so the stopping power is definitely a lot different, and in my opinion, the Hiboy does stop better. Let's just pop back up here to the display real quick, if you don't mind. And same kind of thing here, where if you double click, you can go down to the green. The green is the slower speed. I don't remember what they call it, but the red is the sport mode. Whoops. There we go. Red is the sport mode. And then I want to say that 3 clicks will turn on or turn off cruise control on the Hiboy. I don't remember the click sequence on the Ninebot, but they're very similar as far as that goes. I do want to talk about this little hook here. I like the hook placement of the Hiboy a lot better than I like the hook placement on the Ninebot. It's just personal preference, but I just wanted to show you guys here. You can see, yeah, down here. So this hook placement, in my opinion, is not as good as the Hiboy's hook, because with the Hiboy, if you really wanted to, you could put like a bag of groceries or something on here, and it's not that bad of an adventure. Whereas this one has, it's hard to like put anything here. I mean, sure, you could like wrap it around the top right here, but I just personally like that a little bit better. So whenever you're going to fold this guy up and take it on the commuter piece of this, you're gonna lift up here and then, ooh, we'll see, there we go. So you lift up on this guy, sorry, my fingers are a little bit cold, and you're gonna put it down here. This I really like in comparison to the Ninebot, and I think that it's a lot better. Let me just turn off the light so that it doesn't flash me in the eye anymore. But I think that they're roughly the same. I would feel a lot more confident carrying this on a train and not worrying about it coming off, because the hook on that one is definitely not as sturdy as the hook on this one, but both of them are pretty dang heavy. I didn't weigh them, but everything that I've read said that they weigh roughly 40 pounds, somewhere between 35 and 40 pounds. They're hefty scooters, but that is the class of scooter that you're getting at the 25-ish mile range scooter. So let's talk about the price real quick. Sorry that I didn't get to the price earlier. I apologize. For Black Friday, the Ninebot is actually $399. Whenever I bought it about a month ago, I paid $499 plus tax in Florida, bringing it to roughly like $532. And the Hiboy is about $380, $379 on Amazon. Both of these are on Amazon, and that's where I got them with Prime, etc., etc. But I think that I paid roughly $420 for the Hiboy. So there's $100 difference in these whenever it's not Black Friday, but during Black Friday, they're about $20 difference. This one was $399 for Black Friday. This one is still roughly $379. So, you know, a lot of different things to consider whenever you're looking at these scooters. And you know what? We'll go ahead and wrap up this portion with a quick little bell test. Let me just show you guys how easy this is to undo here. And this can like get a little bit flappy whenever you're riding, but in my opinion, for the most part, it's not that bad. Oh, one more thing I definitely don't want to forget. The charge port is on the top of this one. worth noting, because whenever you're charging this thing, the cord will just hang down and then it's kind of a lot to deal with. Definitely not ideal. If you have like a shelf or something that you could put the charge brick on, that would be nice, but otherwise the cord's hanging down and I feel like there's a lot of stress in that area. I don't love that. And I think that I mentioned it before, but the Ninebot charges just slightly, ever so slightly faster. I think that they both took about 8 hours from 0 to 100 whenever we charged them, obviously on a 120 volt in your normal American outlet, whatever. But the Ninebot charge port is down here, and I like that a lot better. Now, there are some things that I don't love about this, because if it's open and then you ride over some, wet surfaces for whatever reason, and this isn't closed, I feel like that could definitely be a negative to the Ninebot. But overall, as far as charge port access goes, I really, really like it that the Ninebot is on the bottom. Let's talk about how these guys screw in. So we'll start with the Hiboy. There are 2 screws here and 2 screws here. Now, let's say that I'm kind of weird and maybe whenever I got my Hiboy back in the day, I had put an Apple AirTag in it. There were a couple of different places that I looked through. I definitely thought about this spot here because it's pretty big as far as, a spot would go. You could definitely fit an AirTag in this area here. But then I realized that there was a better option whenever I went up here. But this will get really, really loose over time. I've noticed that this has gotten a lot more loose than the Ninebot has. And I think that that's because there are only 4, we'll call them screws, holding in the Hiboy, whereas there are 6 screws holding in the Ninebot. And I think that the placement is better. It's a little bit more sturdy on the Ninebot overall. The Ninebot also has a little reflector here, something to mention that whenever we were mentioning the reflectors, and it has reflectors down here as well, along with the ones on the bottom. So, and then nice and easy, they just click back together. Super simple design as far as that goes. But I do think that the Ninebot is way more sturdy than the Hiboy is. Over time, both of the S2 Pros that I've had, now this one and the one that got, relieved from duty, if you will, in Oregon, had a hard time keeping this area nice and secure. So if you have like arthritic hands, or if you maybe have carpal tunnel or something, this one might not be as comfortable as a riding experience as this one. Now, let's go ahead and talk really quick about the handlebar size. As you can tell, the Ninebot is ever so slightly shorter. I want to say that it's 2 inches shorter than the Hiboy is. So if you're a taller person, you might like the Hiboy just because it's slightly higher up. And if you're a shorter person like me, you might like the Ninebot because it's a little bit lower down. However, I feel like on the Ninebot, I do get a pretty nice solid 90-degree angle. It might be angled up just a little bit, and it's roughly the same for me on the Hiboy as well. So, it just depends on what you feel is more comfortable. However, I want to make sure that you're aware that this spot will get rattled and, start coming undone as you're rolling through. So, all right, now that we've gone over a couple of these things together, let's go over my final thoughts and let you know which one I would choose if I were to take one home right now. Before I give you my final thoughts, we're going to do a quick bell test because obviously it's a scooter. You guys need to know what it sounds like. So that's the Ninebot for you. I feel like that's kind of a classic Lime bird experience. I've lived in Orlando for a long time. I don't know, 10, 12 years before I moved to Oregon. And I've ridden many birds, many limes. I don't remember. They got VO out now. So I know what bells sound like. And this is definitely a pretty traditional bell as far as the normal scooters around here would go. Now, the Hiboy, in my opinion, has a nicer sounding ding. Just my opinion. My friend here, Jotty, shout out to Jotty, y'all. Thank you for filming, man. I really appreciate it. But Jotty says that this sounds like the Milkman. So, if you're trying to hang out with the Milkman, you can come over here and get you some Hiboy action. I personally like the way that the Hiboy sounds a little bit better. This one just sounds kind of played out. I don't know. I mean, it's a little, I don't know. They're bell sounds, guys. What do you want? What do you want me to tell you? I think that the Hiboy sounds a little bit better. I think that Jotty likes the Ninebot bell sounds a little bit better. We've got to tell everybody about who won all the races. So we've had a couple of different races. Jotty's rode, I've rode. We've done some good testing, and we've come to a conclusion as to which one is the fastest overall. And the Ninebot wins every single time. Every time that we've raced. Again, we're roughly the same weight. Jotty's a lot taller than I am. He's like, I don't know, 6'1", 6'2". Shout out to Jotty, y'all. He's just doing a great job over here. But the Ninebot won every time, smoked the Hiboy, even though the Hiboy says that it has a 500 watt like available nominal power rating, and the Ninebot only has a 360, I believe that it said. Sorry, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but roughly 360 watt. So I think that maybe what's happening is that 42 volts is able to pull the motor out faster than the 36 volts that the Hiboy is able to output. The Ninebot is quicker off the line and is quicker overall in all of our tests, uphill, downhill, it doesn't matter. Both of them did reach roughly 20 miles per hour whenever we were going downhill. Again, both of them were roughly 18, 19 miles an hour. I think that the Ninebot hits 18 miles an hour on its own, and the Hiboy will hit 19 miles an hour on its own, but this has to be like perfect conditions, and the battery needs to be nice and toasty and full. Both of them are the same price right now. Which one should you buy? Guys, it has to be the Ninebot. It just has to be, because you can go through and set up the app, and you can name it. It's got a community forum on the app, super cool. Like, there's just a whole lot of great stuff about this Ninebot that I really like. It's a slightly smoother ride. It's got a rear motor so that you're propelled from the back as opposed to from the front. It is worth mentioning that both of them do have almost the same size walking board, standing board here, but the Ninebot is about roughly 2.5 to 3 centimeters, 3/4 of an inch wider than the Hiboy is. I don't know if you're really gonna notice that, but it is worth mentioning that the Ninebot is slightly bigger as far as that goes. The Ninebot charges ever so slightly faster. That could be because maybe the battery pack is a little bit smaller on the Ninebot than the Hiboy. But overall, if you guys are gonna get a scooter right now during Black Friday, the Ninebot, as far as I've seen it, is like $399, and the Hiboy is $379. Guys, I have to go for the Ninebot. So anyways, it was a pleasure going through, having a lot of fun, showing you guys these Ninebots with my friend Jotty. Again, shout out to Jotty. And thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on another one soon. Later, y'all.